I'm going to tell you two things, and only one of them is true. These spectacular images were recorded at the North Pole, and this device has a screen that cures myopia. Only one is correct, and I assure you this is not the North Pole. You're watching this video with your eyes, and probably the screen of the device you're using right now doesn't do your vision any good. Quite the opposite. Well, this Honor Magic 7 Pro is the first smartphone in the world that promises to improve your eyesight in several ways just by looking at its screen. Thanks to impressive hardware and software that isn't explored in depth in other reviews. But is what Honor promises true, or is it just an advertising campaign? I decided to buy this device with my own money to try to find out and focus on the points that almost everyone overlooks. Because in the comments on other videos, some of you had great things to say about this smartphone, and you already know that here on this channel, you are the ones in charge. In this video, I will show the highlights and drawbacks of the smartphone with the most innovative and surprising screen I have tested so far. You've already seen the unboxing, which in my opinion is excessively minimalist. Not only does it not include a charger, but it also doesn't come with a case. Of course, the first thing that catches your eye when you take out this Honor Magic 7 Pro is its design. Especially this color. Depending on how the light hits it, you see different patterns. Honestly, it's very unique. And something I like, especially compared to the Vivo X200 Pro that I tested on this channel, is that dust doesn't stick as much to the rear camera module. We'll see if this also happens with the Vivo X200 Ultra, which you'll also see here on this channel soon. I like that at least they put a plastic film to protect the screen. It's a pretty rounded smartphone, despite the flat frames, and take a look at the ports on the bottom. One of the speakers, a microphone, USB-C 3.2, a dual SIM tray, and you can see that red stripe, and that's because it's protected against dust and water with an IP69 rating. I also like the feel of the buttons. Plus, the lock button has a kind of red line that gives it a lot of personality. On the top, there's another microphone, an infrared port, and also the second speaker, which you'll hear later because I'll tell you now, with this smartphone, you don't need a wireless speaker. On the other side, there's nothing. And by the way, this smartphone is made entirely of glass and aluminum, and it weighs around 223 grams. It feels quite ergonomic in the hand, but let's move on to its standout feature, and that is, without a doubt, its screen.
Yeah.
Not only because it's curved on all four sides, but also because it has the best technologies to protect your eyes. But also, as you can see, it's completely wet, there are still traces of snow on the screen, and you can see that the ultrasonic fingerprint sensor works perfectly. But it's not just the fingerprint sensor. The screen controller doesn't go crazy even when the screen is wet. I like to test these kinds of details on my channel to see if they've really invested in the details of this device, or if they've just tried to cut costs. In this respect, without a doubt, they've invested. It's a 6.8-inch Full HD Plus display with up to 5,000 nits of brightness, that's something, with OLED technology, 120 Hz, and the display is also 10-bit. Remember, for example, that the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra uses an 8-bit display, and I can already tell you it's more expensive than this one. The display is extremely customizable, but let's get to this. The reading mode, as they've called it here, and it has a series of unique features among all the smartphones on the market. And that's because this Honor Magic 7 Pro integrates a circularly polarized display, making it the OLED screen that takes the best care of your eyes. Out of the entire market right now, also, all the features are very well explained, which I really like, honestly. And pay attention to this point. When I reviewed the Vivo X200 Pro, I was pleasantly surprised that its PWM was 2160 Hz, which is very high. But look at what this Honor Magic 7 Pro has, 4320 Hz. Keep in mind that the more hertz you have, in terms of PWM, the better it is for your eyes. But it doesn't just stand out in this aspect. In their lab tests, they claim to have reduced eye strain by 18%. With their smartphone, lutein increases by 52% thanks to the AI-powered screen blur, and there's an average improvement of 13 degrees in transient myopia. On the other hand, melatonin increases by 20%. What does this mean? That if you usually look at your smartphone at night, this one will steal less of your sleep. And you already know, to calculate the PWM, you have to point your smartphone camera, lower the brightness, and look at those stripes. The more stripes there are, the more PWM it has, and the less it harms your eyes. On the right, you have the Honor Magic 7 Pro, and on the left, a conventional OLED smartphone. By the way, both the most expensive iPhone and the most expensive Samsung have PWMs of 240 Hz. 240 Hz compared to the 4320 Hz that this Honor has is a huge difference. Without a doubt, this screen takes care of your eyes like no other. As for its multimedia features, as you can see, it can play 4K HDR videos, it has Dolby Vision, the viewing angles are very good, and the reflections are also very good. Personally, I like the quadruple curvature it has on its sides, and the pill-shaped Face ID cutout is much more subtle and elegant than the one on the iPhone, and it works better, as you'll see next. I've been using this smartphone for a few weeks now, and personally, I can tell you that I have noticed a difference in terms of less eye irritation. My head hurts less when I use it at night, and honestly, my sleep hasn't been affected. Therefore, it seems that it does deliver, at least compared to other OLED smartphones, because this technology still can't compete with the benefits of e-ink displays like the e-ink smartphones I've already tested on this channel. Even so, for an OLED screen, it's a big step forward. And if its screen is what I liked the most, let's move on to the second thing I liked the most, which is definitely its two speakers. I'll tell you right now, these are the best speakers currently integrated into a smartphone. Also, if you go to sound quality and effects, you can increase the bass or enhance the 3D sound. I especially recommend the 3D sound because it's incredibly immersive. And here you have a test of how this Honor Magic 7 Pro sounds. The best smartphone for listening to music with its speakers. And here you have a side-by-side comparison with the phone I use personally. Compared to this Honor, it almost sounds like the audio is coming from a dedicated wireless speaker. All right, let's move on to the third thing I like the most, and that's definitely its cameras. The camera interface is quite simple, and I have to say that on the back there are 3 sensors. The main one is 50 megapixels with an aperture between 1.4 and 2.0. It has an additional 50 megapixel ultra-wide camera and a telephoto lens of 200 megapixels with an aperture of 2.6. Also, the front camera is 50 megapixels as well, and it also has up to 100x digital zoom. But anyway, aside from the more technical details, there are things that have bothered me, like this sport mode that turns on automatically. There's no way to turn it off. I hope they fix this in future updates. That sport mode prioritizes quick shots, sacrificing some quality. It also limits the zoom, and there would be 3 photography modes. I always recommend the natural mode, and one of the secrets I've discovered about this super macro is that if you want to take good macro shots, don't use the super macro. It almost sounds like a tongue twister, but the sensor you should use to take good macro shots is the portrait mode at 6 times zoom. And activate, as you can already see at the bottom right, AI. And according to the tests I've been able to do, the best macro shots are taken with this specific setup. You're already seeing the photos it can take, taken with this macro, with this specific mode, and they are much better than the default macro that comes with this Honor Magic 7 Pro. And by the way, I know some of you might be wondering, and the answer is no. This telephoto lens is not on the same level as the one provided by the Vivo X200 Pro. Let's say that the telephoto lens on this Honor Magic 7 Pro is 1 or 2 steps behind the Vivo. What I did like more in this Honor than in the Vivo is its AI. You can see how well it works, especially when it comes to erasing objects. Let's also say that both its photography and the phone itself make quite a lot of use of AI. It relies a lot on this, and as you can see, when it comes to removing objects using AI, it does it very well. Another thing I liked is not so much its photo editor, which is pretty standard, but rather the video editor. It's the most complete video editor with more tools than you can find by default on a smartphone today. And let's move on to another point that hardly anyone mentions on any other YouTube channel, but I haven't overlooked it, and it's something a bit strange. And that's because the zoom that Honor promises is 3x, but its real zoom is not actually 3x. You're lucky to be watching this video and to have made it to this part, because now you'll know that the real native zoom of this Honor Magic 7 Pro is 2.5x. Other international analysts say it's at 2.6 or 2.5. Well, as you can see, there's a slight crop. Not at 3x, but at 2.9x. But also, in video mode, as you can see, the default zoom is 2.6x. It doesn't make any sense. But anyway, when you realize this, that the native zoom is at 2.5 or 2.6x instead of 3x, and you adjust the photo and video cameras, at this point, specifically the zoom, even though it's not as good as the Vivo X200 Pros, is still one of the best zooms. As you can see, it was really hard for me to photograph these bees pollinating these dandelions. But you can see that some of the images are truly sublime with this setup I just gave you. And let's get to the part that's causing the most international controversy about this Honor Magic 7 Pro, which is that it's the first smartphone to feature a digital zoom with regenerative artificial intelligence. This can be done starting from 30x zoom. You can already see that icon appearing at the bottom right. And what this artificial intelligence does is that for images with too much zoom, it completes them by adding surroundings, adding objects, adding things. Which, after all, even though it's true that it's a bit of a trick, this artificial intelligence sometimes doesn't do a bad job at all, and it's definitely quite interesting. Even so, you should know that to activate this, you need an internet connection. No exceptions. If, for example, you're in the mountains and you don't have an internet connection, this option can't be activated. However, there are things I didn't like, such as the photo of the sheep. As you can see, the artificial intelligence doesn't perform well. It looks like an artificial drawing. I hope this improves over time. Something else I don't like about Honor's artificial intelligence is that both for the sun and for night lights, it creates a kind of halo effect that, while it might look nice for sharing on social media, is not natural at all. I hope that in future updates they add the option to remove those light halos. All right, Let's move on to the rest of the photos. How do the rest of the sensors on this Honor perform? If I had to define its camera system in one word, it would be versatile. It's quite reliable in all configurations, although none of them particularly stand out. Maybe those artificial intelligence tricks were the most remarkable, along with the super macro using the portrait trick I mentioned earlier. Even so, they're very good photos, very acceptable, with good colors. By the way, some of the best photos I've taken with this Honor Magic 7 Pro, I'll leave it for you at the highest resolution on my Telegram channel, so you can download the photos and enlarge them as much as you want. That way you can check for yourselves. How well does this smartphone take photos? I'll leave the link to my Telegram below in the video description. Still, Honor has its own touch. Let's say the colors look a little more saturated, there's a bit more contrast. That's Honor's signature. Some people like this more, others less. From my personal point of view, and after having tested the Vivo X200 Pro, I'm sorry, but as of today, that smartphone holds the crown. And speaking of kings, at night this Honor really becomes a king. That said, the Moon AI once again seems ridiculously artificial to me, and let's see how it does with videos. Video with the Honor Magic 7 Pro. Here's what its stabilization and microphone sound would be like. The truth is that this screen looks amazing. Even though the sun is shining directly on it right now, you can see the shadows of the trees. It looks really great. It seems that the stabilization is pretty good. At least on the screen, it looks very well stabilized. This, by the way, would be video at maximum resolution. That is 4K at 60 frames per second. Unfortunately, it doesn't have 120 frames per second, at least for now, unless they update it because you know Honor has promised 7 years of updates. So we'll see if they implement this 120 frames per second feature later on. And let's move on to the hardware and software. I love ultrasonic fingerprint sensors. I think it's the ultimate unlocking system. But here you also have a Face ID sensor, or a kind of Face ID. Just as secure as Apple's, but in my opinion, it's faster. And that pill-shaped cutout is more elegant. And also on this smartphone, you can use both unlocking systems at the same time. And by the way, it has double tap to wake, but not to turn off. I hope they add this in future updates. And of course, this Honor Magic 7 Pro works extremely smoothly. Everything runs very well. However, the haptic motor is not as pro as, for example, the one in the One Plus, which in my opinion is still the best among brands in this regard when it comes to the vibration motor. It has 12 gigabytes of RAM, plus another 12 gigabytes of RAM, that you can add virtually. Of course, it includes the Snapdragon 8 Elite, and in this version, 512 gigabytes of internal storage. On the other hand, it comes with stock Android 15. But the best thing about this smartphone, the big surprise I got? Check this out. All the reviews were saying that the Honor Magic 7 Pro includes 5 years of updates, which wasn't bad. But when I went to the official website, check this out because they've changed it, they've updated it, and now it includes 7 years of updates. That means this smartphone will be updated until 2032 and joins the top 3 brands for long-term smartphone updates. Samsung, Google, and now Honor. This interface is very complete and offers some interesting features. I'd have to make another video if I see that you like this one and ask me about the interface of this Honor. But I assure you that for those of you who have an iPhone, let's say this is the best interface to switch from iPhone to Android. When it comes to everyday apps, like Instagram for example, obviously with this processor and this 120 Hz screen, everything runs very smoothly. It runs like butter. it's much better. For your eyes, it's better than the rest of the alternatives with OLED screens currently on the market. On the other hand, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, data, and also GPS all work perfectly. I've already tested the Snapdragon 8 Elite on this channel, and just like the others, it's blazing fast. And of course, this smartphone is also great for gaming. Plus, it includes passive cooling, and I haven't noticed it getting hotter than other smartphones even when you push it hard. Also, having these speakers, it's a bonus for anyone who wants to play games. And look, this SSD is one of the smallest in the world. Check out how long it takes to transfer a video of more than half a gig. I assure you, the video is not sped up. It literally lasted a blink of an eye. This is the iFro, which besides being the smallest and fastest SSD in the world, can be magnetically attached to the back of any device. I'll leave the link below in case anyone wants to check it out. And now, let's get to the point that has caused the most controversy about this Honor Magic 7 Pro, and that's its battery. It's a 5,270 milliamp hour battery, and let's just say it's been downgraded compared to the Chinese version. That is, this global version has less battery than the Chinese version. This has caused quite a stir. Even so, 5,270 milliamp hours is not a bad value. And also, this Honor battery is from the new generation of silicon carbon. That is, it works with more extreme temperatures and supports more charging cycles. Also, I like that it includes many features to protect this battery. Plus, 100-watt fast charging, 80-watt wireless charging, and it also supports reverse wireless charging. It can easily last you a day and a half. Of course, if you don't push it too hard, you could even get up to 2 days of battery. And now, the most important point. How much does this Honor Magic 7 Pro cost? Well, as you can see, it's 899 euros for the version with 512 gigabytes and 12 gigabytes of RAM. In fact, it cost me 100 euros more than it does now. Further down in the video description, I'll leave you the purchase link. My conclusion is that this artificial intelligence from Honor shows a lot of promise. I should also say that Honor already mentioned in the launch conference that this enhanced and regenerative zoom is still pretty raw, meaning they'll keep improving it over the years. And from now until 2032, that's a lot of years. Therefore, there's a lot of room for improvement, and it's especially promising. And with that said, you already know you can find the best uncompressed photos on my Telegram. Some of these photos could definitely be used as wallpapers. And ultimately, Honor has made the best screen in the world. It has the best speakers in the world and also 7 years of updates. Also, for under 900 euros, I think Honor is doing things right. And although this smartphone is not perfect, it's on the right track. Subscribe if you haven't already, and leave me a like so I can keep recording in these amazing places. Even though in this video I confess that I almost froze my hands to get the shots you've been watching. If you liked it, share it. And I'll see you in the next video, which I can already tell you will be about a gem from Vivo. And now, take care and see you soon.